Like we mentioned what aesthetic gesture means, but if there's no aesthetic gesture, then there's kind of silence, right? Like,
Exactly.
and that usually comes from big institutions.
Yeah, and
And
I think there will be more like or merely aesthetic gestures that
yeah,
will happen probably in the near future.
yeah. So I was scrolling and scrolling and doom scrolling one day on Instagram, like I am now. And then on my explore page, I stumbled upon a post by an account user called Noam_YR. And this post was kind of like a video or a reel where there was a browser, or it still is a browser. And on this browser, there was a website. And on the website, there's a map, an interactive map. And in the middle of the map, there is a transparent red rectangle that is actually a floor plan of Al-Mawasi, the so-called humanitarian zone near Rafah, where 1.8 million Palestinians are displaced. And this map, it also locates your current location. So you can compare the scale of the humanitarian zone with your near surroundings. And I was based in Los Angeles when I stumbled upon this web tool. And I was just shocked to learn about the scale and how small it is actually compared to the nearby neighborhoods. And I was also at that time really kind of like stuck in the research of cyber-feminist history and always looking at the websites made in the 90s by cyber-feminists and kind of looking at examples that represented a better internet. And so when I saw this website, I thought it was a perfect example that represents the internet of contemporary internet, and to be more specific, internet of 2020s, and to be even more specific, 2023 and 2024. But the sad truth about my user experience is that I found this website on my Instagram and not on my browser. So I decided that, or like to fight against just commenting and mere liking, I decided to reach out to Noam and to invite them to record an episode together. So Noam Youngrak Son is a communication designer practicing queer publishing. They explore revolutionary methods of disseminating deviant narratives. In their work, publishing concerns more than mere printed matter, since in its etymology, the word publishing originally meant to populate communities and to breed interspecies relations. The term queer in this context is not used as a statement of identity, but as that of methodology. Small yet collective strategies of publishing that challenge the modern myth of a singular, heroic, genius designer. So today in this episode, we're going to review 3 websites that Noam recently made. And they're kind of like web tools, small scale websites that I love. One of them is this one that I just kind of reviewed, 1.8 million displaced here. The second one is the most recent one, From the River to the Sea. And the Forbidden Colors translator is the first one that they made. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your practice?
Yeah, I think actually you just did it brilliantly as I wrote.
Yeah.
Well, what I would like to, I think what you just read is more than sufficient.
Yeah. This is a bio from your website, exactly. By the way.
So I think it's really more than sufficient. I spent a lot of time and energy to find the right words to describe my work that I usually do.
Cool.
However, I think in discussing these three tools that you just introduced, I would like to frame it slightly differently in the sense that these tools are, I think, very different. I mean, still, of course, relying on the tools, techniques, and methods that was derived that was derived from my usual work. But I think I position myself very differently compared to the other projects that I've been doing. So I would like to begin by maybe making that very clear. So
maybe it's an idea to go through them. That's really cool that you say that. I think what I would like to do is just imagining that we go through them and kind of describe what their functions are, and also maybe overview the reasons why you made them. Because they're, for me, like, they're very clear, urgently published tools to show solidarity with Palestinian people. And I also just want to kind of go through, kind of explore that in a technical sense, because you also have the skills of a coder and web developer, and this is such a refreshing way of using those skills. So I would like to tackle more into that, but also like to make it just clear to the viewers and the users, just explain the functions of each.
Yeah, I mean, from what you just said, indeed, I want to highlight the sense of urgency. And I think that is indeed the aspect that made this very different from the usual work of mine. So shall we then get into the specifics of these works?
Yeah, definitely. Let's start with the first one, maybe. Forbidden. This was the first one, right?
Yes, chronologically it was the first one, but also feel free to choose the order that you would like to discuss.
So maybe actually we can define that. Do they belong to one series, or do you imagine also starting, because they have like kind of like a similar aesthetic, they have a similar fav icon, and I read them as a series of web tools that have the function of solidarity for Palestinian people.
I think it is indeed a series in the sense that they are responding to the very similar urgency that that I see, but also I also want to avoid an impression that it is like a branded series.
Exactly.
In this, because I mean, it was not intended as a series from when I was starting. And I also don't know if I'm going to make more tools or not. Also, I think it entirely depends on, first of all, like what I can do, what I'm capable of doing, and at the same time, how the circumstance in Palestine elevates.
I think that's super important to mention already from the beginning, and I think that's why I asked this question. So shall we start with the Forbidden Colors Translator? What does this website do?
Yeah, maybe before that, sorry,
No
I just
worries.
want to respond to another aspect that the similarity of style and the same visual resources that is being repeated. And I think, of course, I mean that's the central dogma of branding, right? I mean, to have consistency, to have the repetition of the same style. But I doubt that I started from the same intention. Of course, the repetition of the same element is what we see in brands, but in this case, I think it was more of a very practical and economic approach of using the same same or like slightly modified CSS for every web. I think that is also related to a very technicity of these tools. Or you could even say the nature of the, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript structure. But I just wanted to emphasize that their visual similarity is also very much formed by those material and technical constraints rather than like me being the master of the aesthetics in this design. That's amazing.
I mean, also I think at some point you also mentioned, or at least from the notes that I was reading, that it's an urgency. So in that case, it has the small scale, and the website, like when I see it, I know that it's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So in that case, I really admire that it's using simple technologies, because it's not so much about the technologies. And if you can kind of eliminate that labor into not having a heavy stack in order to prioritize that urgency, then you did it right, you know? But yeah, let's get into the functions, because I'm super excited about them.
Let's do that.
So forbidden colors translator. You have to choose a file. And what I love about this one, also like their functions are really small scale from all of them. It reminds me of like diverting the user experience in which you just convert a YouTube sound to an MP3 file. It has like that similar, I don't know, scale and this like urgent thing that you can do really quickly. But it's obviously like targeting, or not targeting, but like specifically related to a political issue that we are facing. So yeah, let's talk about what does this one do?
So this is a simple image translator. So first of all, you can upload just whatever image file that you have, and what it does is to translate every pixel of it to either into one of the forbidden colors. You know, the colors that consist Palestinian flags, essentially red, green, black, and white. So, oh yeah, you're demonstrating it.
I'm gonna do the full UX review.
Go for it.
So I have to save the image.
And indeed the terminology forbidden color is borrowed from yes.
So let's do desktop. Yeah, here. Translate your image into forbidden colors. And it does it so quickly.
It runs everything on the browser level. So yeah, I mean, I was talking about the where I got the name forbidden color from. So it's based on this work of Felix Gonzalez Torres, Forbidden Colors.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, sometimes shocking and heartbreaking for me. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe I'm getting distracted here.
No worries. But indeed, that is the reference, and I mean the political status quo that this work was depicting didn't necessarily got better after many decades.
Yeah.
I mean, it got worse, obviously. Yeah.
I think this is also the catch, like that kind of repeats on all of them, that this is not a mere aesthetic gesture, but a practical tool. And I think that's like super clear from the moment I saw each of this website. I was like, it immediately translates what it's meant for. Like the function is the aesthetic, kind of. And that's like super hard to reach, especially when we're talking about, when we are responding to what is happening in the world. So yeah, like if you can talk about, I don't know, like how did you think immediately that this is the function that needs to be, that shows solidarity? Like how did that come to you when you were making this website, or like when you decided to make the website?
Well, I think I think, I mean, of course there are many levels of experience, I think, that informed me to make this website.
Yeah.
I think the first layer of that would be, of course, witnessing the first live streamed genocide ever in the history, or at least within my lifespan.
Yeah.
And I think it was more than that in the sense that I mean there are many levels of experience that that I have also as a precarious cultural worker in the cultural sector of the in the West. no, I mean, for example, by seeing the coworkers getting canceled literally from posting some things on their Instagram. I think, I mean, I find myself very privileged and lucky to live in the part of the world and work in the cultural sector that is maybe a bit more capable of holding the space together. But I mean, what we're witnessing now in the German cultural sector, for example, is absolutely horrible, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And also, I mean, this doesn't happen only in the publicly funded cultural institutions, but also these algorithmic means of this image distribution. I'm talking about Instagram, for example, like having these algorithmically facilitated censorship on any content that talks about Palestine.
Right.
It was, for example, very very interesting to see how the post about this circulates on Instagram. So I had like very low engagement from the followers that I've already had. But most of the impressions that were made on Instagram about, I think in particular this webpage, was from people sharing the post on their story and like letting me access their audience, because I think I was not allowed by the platform to reach my audience. From, I mean, at least that's what I could read from the statistics. That it had very low engagement from my own followers, but a lot of the followers that I didn't have.
Do you have any statistics about the usage of the website?
No, unfortunately, I'm not collecting it.
Nice.
I think that's also what makes it safer.
But have you had people kind of like tagging you if they have translated images, and is that content that is also censored, or does it kind of does it escape the censorship that exists on social media platforms?
I think no. I mean, I'm not sure if I could really tell like how like the very precise forms of like I think that is the point of shadow banning, right? To make it obscure, like how to make it obscure, how much your access is negatively influenced.
Right.
But indeed, it was a very heartwarming experience to I'm distracted by the screen again.
Sorry.
But no worries. It was a very heartwarming experience to see the tool actually being in use in many different geographical contexts, and also in various forms, like people changing their profile picture in the translated version.
Amazing.
Or making Instagram event post using this. I mean, part of the intended function that I listed for this was I thought this could be also very like strategically utilized in order to avoid algorithmic censorship, in the sense that then you can, by using this tool, you can signify that something is related to Palestine without for example, directly mentioning Palestine. That makes it more recognizable for these algorithms to censor. But so and people were also, one of the other intended use was indeed for printing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
people, I've also seen people making, using this for making prints.
Amazing, yeah.
Because, I mean, part of the more of a technological inspiration that I had for this was coming from my experience as a self-publisher, dealing with
Right.
printing, and this separation of color, which is pretty much the process that you have to do manually
Yeah.
when you're printing. Separating the full color, like RGB or CMYK
Yeah.
image into the particular hues that you're using for
Yeah.
print. And also this was, I mean, partially inspired by GIF compression.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's exactly what it reminds me of. This experience.
Exactly.
And it's like the button doesn't, like I also love that there is not so much style in it apart from the colors. That the colors kind of bring out or a certain, I don't know, awareness or memory. But in terms of like button design, everything it's almost like this, like function is prioritized here.
Yeah. So I think the overall trajectory of our conversation started from the motivation and
Yeah.
kind of converging into the technological aspect of it. But yeah. So I think that was the second layer of experience that I was having. So to give a short recap, the first one was the witnessing of what is happening there, and the second layer, what I'm experiencing as a precarious cultural worker in the cultural sector here.
Yeah.
And I think finally, in relation to this experience of the industry-wide censorship, I think I just had a lot of resentment about my own field. That I'm so, as you introduced, I used the word communication design to describe my occupation. I mean, because I do come from a design background. Like my bachelor was in Eindhoven.
Yeah.
In the communication design department of Design Academy Eindhoven.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a moment of disillusioning. That the field, the whole cultural sector that kind of pride themselves in being critical, in being transformational. I mean, that's the word they use, right? Yeah. I don't know, being anti-capitalist, like anti-colonial, anti-patriarchal, being surprisingly silent when all the adjectives that they listed is actually in need.
Yeah.
Like, I think this conversation we're having now is coinciding with the Design Week in Milan.
Yeah.
And also Venice Biennial, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, to me it doesn't make a lot of sense that there is, I looked it up, like if there is anything related that responds in any way to the currently ongoing genocide.
Yeah.
In the context of the design the Design Week in Milan, first of all, and also the Design Week in Eindhoven last year, which was, I think, like month or two after the 7th of October.
Yeah.
I think a month.
Yeah.
And from what I could find, of course, I mean, there could have been something that I missed, but from what I could at least access through deep Googling, there was literally none of the event happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think all those experience combined gave me motivation to make this tool.
Yeah.
The very first tool.
Yeah, I feel like if there's no, like we mentioned what aesthetic gesture means, but if there's no aesthetic gesture, then there's kind of silence,
Exactly.
right? Like, and that usually comes from big institutions.
Yeah, and I think there will be more like or merely aesthetic gestures that will happen probably in the near future.
Yeah, I think so too.
But that would only, I think, begin from, I mean, even though it is very empowering to see a more like independently organized or like grassroots initiatives that uses design or publishing or art as a tool, as a means of resistance. I think that is still happening in a very marginalized or peripheral spaces.
Right.
And in order like to see the whole sector to respond to this issue in the way that they you know that they promote themselves, that they market themselves. I think it'll only take place. I mean, it's just my speculation, but it'll only take place, I think, after when it's no longer urgent or like radical to say free Palestine. In other words, when there's when all the risk that is associated with this statement, for example, like free Palestine or like from the river to the sea, is eliminated, then they will start responding to it in a very fetishizing way,
right?
That uses the whole circumstance as an object, as an object of aesthetic representation. And I think that just makes me really angry in general.
Yeah, this is what you were talking about also in our first conversation, that like archives take time and it always happens in the future and it becomes this tokenization almost. And I think that's why you also decided to never put a signature on one of these websites, right? Could you talk a bit more about that choice, or if there's something more to it? Because I really admire that move, and I think it's great because you kind of almost eliminate yourself as a creator of this website, because primarily it has this functional. It's a tool. I think that's what I indeed meant in the very beginning of our conversation. Like I want to be clear about how I position myself in this. And of course, I'm undeniably a part of the cultural sector. I mean, I earn from it. And I cannot pay my rent without it. And all the knowledge, method, tools are either learned, borrowed, appropriated from what we do in the cultural sector. And I have like no interest in excessively antagonizing the platforms that I'm reliant on. But I just wanted to make sure that I differentiate also these ways of representation
that is in a way habituated in my work in the cultural sector. That is, I think, also kind of conforming to the neoliberal tendencies, right? Like being the artist, going to the opening. I hate art. I hate openings, by the way, and I I don't like free drinks. But you know, like kind of self-design, foregrounding the self over the artworks. So that's why I also don't call these websites as artworks or design projects.
Yeah.
Because there is, I think, tendencies that are very difficult to resist. In the ontology of design projects or like artworks, that is inevitably related to commodity fetishism.
Yeah.
That kind of reduces all these social relations and technical capacities of these tools into something that could be exhibited or something that could be supported by Mondrian Fund. So I think that motivated me in like certain aesthetic choices that I made in the presentation of it. For example, by using the default typefaces, or not putting my name in the website itself.
This is, like, because, I don't want to get into the question of like what is art or what is design or what is the difference between the two.
I would also like to avoid that discussion.
We can definitely, but just one remark in terms of, like designers also reject the idea that design is functional. But in this case, if we I think most of the users would look at this as an artwork that is functional, so maybe it's like a new format that is happening, but like I have a hard time. It almost like gives hope to design, but then also gives hope to art, and there's something extremely optimistic that I see about this format of the web tool that kind of just maybe muddies even more this differentiation between art and design. And that's why it's like when I was struck by it as a very refreshing.
Yeah, in response to that, I had when I published these tools, I think especially Forbidden Color Translator, that is really the very first experience ever that I've had to make this with use value rather than fictitious value.
Yeah.
Because I mean you're also taught at an art school. And so I guess you're also very familiar to this, but we are always taught in a way to make something that speculates, make something that makes us think. Make conversation starters.
Definitely.
Rather than
function, like
I also have like no interest in like romanticizing function or like depreciating conversation starters. I think everything else that I do always just fall into that category. But at least with this project, with this work, I really had the very first impression that I made something that is more than initiating conversation, but with actual use value.
That's exactly what now we're having a conversation around this, right?
Exactly.
But I also did like have the initial user experience where I actually tested it and saw a lot of potential in it. Shall we move on to the other ones? Let's try this first one. I think I didn't say a lot about it. 1.5 8 million displaced here. Do you want to share something more that I missed out on?
I think what you how you described it in the beginning
Yeah.
is very clear. I mean, I appreciate it in the sense that as a maker of it, it's very difficult for me to have a
Right.
realistic understanding of how. I mean, of course, people tell me about how they perceive it,
Yeah, for sure.
like it's very difficult to have very concrete understanding of how
Right.
is like the every step of the process of this being perceived.
Yeah.
And I think you did it brilliantly, which I appreciate. That I think I'm inherently biased as the maker of it,
Yeah.
so it was really
Yeah.
refreshing to hear
Thanks.
how this but yeah, with this tool I'm interested in also understanding the capacity of it and also the limitation of it, because this is a map, and I'm also not so interested in idealizing a map. I mean, map is also a tool and a very specific technology that is associated with long colonial history, right? I mean,
Definitely,
I find the projects like clearing the map or
yeah.
yeah, I cannot think of more projects
Yeah.
that relates to this more queer or deviant uses of a map, but I think there's this inherent limit of abstraction that map as a technology carries. So I think what this tool can be really useful for is like how you described how you felt about this tool,
Yeah.
to create the very initial understanding of how actually inhumane
Yeah.
and beyond imaginable this circumstance is of the displacement of the entire population.
Yeah.
But also I would like to be very constructive about the limitation of this has as a tool. So I mean, it essentially abstracts the extreme inhumane condition that Palestinians experience in the so-called humanitarian zone into this translucent box, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't. So I think this is the tool out of those three that has the longest paragraph associated to it,
Yeah.
right? And I think this is why it had to be in such a way, because to a certain extent I also wanted to resist this reductive tendencies that map has, and also I mean partially unlearn this very simplistic and conclusive attitude that I still I think embodied from my upbringing as a not upbringing, I mean my background as a designer.
Yeah.
So I really thought when I was making it I had to clarify what this exactly signifies,
Right.
and what is beyond the representation, like what is represented here and what could not be entirely represented, and what I couldn't represent through the schematic of the map is written as the paragraphs after it is.
And it really works. I like that you also guide through the text, like on the real intention of the map and the rectangle, because I could also without the text just see it as like, okay, it's a point, but like I would never think that think of like being instructed to actually compare it to my surroundings.
Exactly.
You know, I could see it as a filter, or I could see it as, I don't know, just rectangle over a map, like an aesthetic gesture or something to play around with and maybe try to get rid of. But I really like that it has this, like, it's about scale, and it really works in creating this mental space, and also imagining the amount of people, because you have that so clearly in the title, like 1.8 million is unimaginable on this floor plan. And it's inhabited, or like it's injected in the surroundings that I know, because it immediately captures where I'm located. So it's really powerful in that sense.
It was also very, I mean, the fact that you mentioned LA, where you were using this tool, and when you were first introduced to it.
Let's try it again.
Inspiring in the sense that, I mean, I think being situated in Benelux, which is still the most, one of the most populated parts of Europe, right?
Yeah.
But I think accessing to this tool in the suburbia of the in the North American context, really makes gives different nuance to it in terms of how it juxtaposes differently populated, differently occupied landscape. Also being in this, you know, extremely white, unsustainable, you know, cis heteronormative suburban landscape of the States.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it was interesting to hear that your first access to this tool was based in LA.
Yeah, I think I definitely have like two different experiences when I compare it, when I place it in Amsterdam, because I know Amsterdam, I experienced the city through biking, you know, so like the means of transportation play a big role in this. And then in LA, I'm driving. So like I have a different speed of experiencing the city, and also having this mental map. Everything is kind of, you know, like related to the freeways and highways that I'm using instead of actually the neighborhoods. So in that sense, it definitely has this like more abstract impact when it's in the US. But I mean, reading it on a map, it still makes it insanely impossible to imagine how many people are located here.
Exactly.
And can we talk about from the river to the sea?
Yes.
I'm not super, you just sent me before we were going to do this conversation. So I haven't had time, unfortunately, to look super into it. But we can use this moment to go through the function.
So it was inspired by actually an April Fool's Day article posted on Hyperallergic.
Yeah.
That saying German museums chooses to remove all the artworks that are related to rivers and seas in response to the, you know, anti-Semitic accusation.
Right.
Which is, I mean, of course, like absurd. Something. It was a good, I think, April Fool's Day joke. But also wouldn't be so surprised if that would have happened in real life.
Yeah.
Like I was recently near the Pinakothek Museum in Munich, and I was reading an article about their one of their security workers was fired by placing the painting that he made next to the you know, the masterpieces that was exhibited in the classical art museum.
What was the painting about?
I have no idea. I wanted to look for it. I honestly Googled like the artwork, but I couldn't find it. But so on the one hand, I think these institutions, especially with classical art, and old money, doesn't seem very open to me, at least. But on the other hand, I mean, they're publicly funded institutions, and I mean there are a lot of interesting efforts made by either the institutions or like the individuals in the institution to make those more open and accessible. And this was the API made by so this webpage uses the API made by Rijksmuseum, which is not so far from where we are having this conversation at this moment. So what it allows you is to essentially browse through to access their database of public domain artworks, and also the metadata of it, like so the title, artist, and the description, the method, the time, and so so I just so what this website essentially does is to construct this statement that is accused, for being anti-Semitic, from the river to the sea, which was also, I think, I mean, there was recently, I think, a trial in the Dutch court about this statement that is not anti-Semitic, or like that is allowed to use this statement in the Netherlands. Yeah, even though it is still very widely accused for being anti-Semitic, and so yeah, it what it does is just to present one artwork from Rijksmuseum database that depicts a river, and another artwork that is depicting and to construct this statement. And
then when we stop refreshing images,
and then it stops refreshing,
and then you get this composition that gives a river and a sea,
generously supported by Rijksmuseum, and
which is probably not something that they would do.
I was honestly curious about how they would respond. How this institution would respond, but in my understanding, when I was reading the content policy of this API, it doesn't actually go against
reusing it.
So if they restrict my access to their API for making this statement, I doubt that's actually based on their the content policy that they created. And I think this really, I mean, for me, this resonates with what I meant by still like being able to appropriate the platforms that I have access to. Like, for example, I think you also in our previous conversation, you pointed out I didn't purchase extra domain to host these web pages, but I just used the domain name that I already had, and decided to make just independent pages that are not per se linked to my website. And I think in contrary to this institutional fetishism, that obscures these technical capacity of whatever technology or institution that could be the domain, Instagram, the API, Rijksmuseum, Mondrian Fund, Stimulating Fund, whatever. I think they all have their technical capacity that is still open. And what I'm interested as a cultural worker is, I think, to bring attention to what still remains accessible.
This is a better, like, I couldn't have wished for a better user experience of each of these web tools. And I think, unfortunately, we ran out of time.
Oh,
but
no.
thank you so much for joining and saying yes. And I think this is, I'm so happy to to give a spotlight to these web tools. And I really hope that there will be more coming, because I think they do deliver a really strong message. And I'm very happy that I could get this.
Can I make the very last acknowledgement
yes,
before? So, I mean, I know how to program. I know how to make websites.
Yeah.
But I think the most like limited part of my knowledge is like how to make it accessible for the wider population. And I think the cultural sector that we're in is doing actually a really bad job there. That like these a lot. I think, of course, at the end of the day, it converges into this question of resource.
Yeah.
And I know it is very difficult to make the web pages that are suitable for screen readers, for those who are colorblind, for those who have various forms of disabilities.
Yeah.
But so I and in making these websites, because I mean I had to think of when I was releasing the Forbidden Colors translator, that this is actually could be a nightmare for those with color blindness, because it relies on the different hue of green and red. So my partner, who works in IT, has this knowledge on like how to make platforms, digital platforms, more accessible. So for like after releasing Forbidden Colors translator, there was very generous support from my partner, whose day job is related to the accessibility of web, to ensure that this tool is usable by the wider population of the internet. So I think, first of all, this is a reminder for the fellow web artists to consider the aspect in their practice, and also appreciation for my partner who performed very generous unpaid labor for that. I mean, essentially,
that's solidarity. That's great.
Yeah, I think that is solidarity indeed. Like, all these web pages are made within the time frame of a day, with no funding. So from conceptualization to development and release, situated within one day. And I think it was crucial for me to have the person with this knowledge as my chosen family member.
Yeah, amazing. Greetings to your partner.
Will do.
Amazing.